Imani Carter made 3 mistakes that night. First, taking a bold photo in a black satin slip dress to remind herself she was still that girl. Second, sending it to the wrong contact in her phone. Third, completely underestimating the man who received it. His response came within seconds. Breathtaking. I will send a car at 7 tomorrow evening. Where exactly that? She blocked the number immediately, heart slamming against her ribs. Probably some random creep who got lucky. But the following evening, her doorbell rang with a quiet authority that made her stomach drop. A man in a perfectly pressed dark suit stood in her hallway with the stillness of someone who had never, once in his life, been told to wait. Mr. Shin does not appreciate being ignored. The car is outside. That was when it landed. She had not texted a stranger. She had accidentally sent a satin slip dress photo to Shin Woo-jin, the most untouchable Korean crime boss in Chicago, a man whose silver hair and cold eyes appeared in exactly 0 news articles and approximately 100 whispered conversations. And he had decided she was his. If you are already holding your breath, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me what you think Imani should do. Walk out that door or stay and find out exactly what kind of man sends a car instead of a reply. 24 hours earlier, Imani had been sitting cross-legged on her bathroom floor, surrounded by the evidence of a thoroughly mediocre Saturday. Her ex, Brandon, had posted a photo on his Instagram with his new girlfriend, some wellness influencer with a curated aesthetic and a smile that took up her whole face. 6 months since he had ended things, and somehow the sight of it still had the specific sting of something unfinished. He had spent those same 2 years trying to compress herself into something more manageable, and it had still not been enough. Her best friend, Kezia, had texted her that afternoon with the specific energy of someone who had decided enough was enough. You are gorgeous, and you've been moping for 6 months. Take a photo. For you. Not for him, not for anyone. Just to remind yourself who you are. Imani poured herself a glass of wine and thought about it. The black satin slip dress had been hanging in her closet since February, tags still attached, bought for a Valentine's dinner that Brandon had canceled and never rescheduled. Tonight felt like the right time to stop saving things for occasions that never came. The photo came out better than she had any right to expect. She looked confident and self-possessed, and like a woman who had genuinely stopped waiting for permission. She meant to send it to Kezia with 3 fire emojis and a caption about reclaiming her energy. Her thumb hit send before she verified the contact. The message showed delivered to someone listed in her phone as Riverside Management, the number the property company had given all residents for maintenance queries. She had texted them 2 weeks ago about a window that would not close properly. The bottom fell out of her stomach. She tried to unsend it. The red notification appeared before she could. Then 3 dots. Someone was typing. Wrong number. Please delete that immediately. She fired off the message with shaking hands and a face that had gone completely hot. The response arrived, and Imani went very still. Breathtaking. I will send a car at 7 tomorrow evening. Where exactly that? What kind of property management company employed people who responded like that? She blocked the number immediately and spent the rest of the evening convincing herself it was over. Some bored office worker who thought he was being clever. He did not know her name or her apartment number. She was fine. She was completely fine. She did not sleep well. The next day passed with the specific agony of waiting for something you cannot name. She checked her door's peephole 4 times and had almost successfully talked herself into believing she had overreacted by the time evening arrived. She had ordered jollof rice from the spot on Michigan Avenue and was halfway through an episode of something she wouldn't remember later when the knock came. Imani went completely still. She crossed to the door and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway wearing a suit that had not been purchased anywhere she had ever been. His face was professionally expressionless, the specific blankness of someone who was paid to convey nothing. He knocked again with a precise economy of movement. "Miss Carter, Mr. Shin sends his regards. He is waiting downstairs." Her heart relocated somewhere in her throat. She did not know a Mr. Shin. "You have the wrong apartment," she called through the door with a voice that was considerably steadier than she felt. The man did not move. "Mr. Shin also asked me to tell you that he understands if you are uncomfortable and will not pursue the matter further if you choose to decline. However, he would like the opportunity to apologize in person for any alarm he may have caused. One dinner, nothing more." This was either the most elaborate and unsettling romantic gesture in recorded history, or she was in genuine danger. Calling the police felt disproportionate. What would she say? A man with silver hair wants to take me to dinner? But something about the way this suited stranger said Mr. Shin carried a weight that suggested the name was supposed to mean something. "Who exactly is Mr. Shin?" she asked. The man's expression did not change. Someone who rarely asks twice. That should have sent her straight to deadbolt and do not answer. Instead, the part of Imani that had taken that photo in the first place, the part that was exhausted from making herself small and palatable and safe, said something her brain had not approved. "Give me 15 minutes." She could not believe the words had left her body, but there they were. She ran to her bedroom, asking herself what on earth she was doing. She was not wearing the satin dress. That would be insane. But she was also not answering the door in the oversized shirt she had been eating rice in. She pulled on a midnight blue wrap dress, elegant enough for wherever they were going, sensible enough that she could move quickly if the situation called for it. Her hands were not entirely steady as she touched up her lip color. This was probably the least intelligent decision she had made in her adult life, but she was so tired of choosing the safe thing and ending up with nothing to show for it. The suited man was still in the hallway when she opened her door. He looked her over once, brief and professional. "This way, Miss Carter." The elevator ride down was silent. Every reasonable part of Imani told her to press the emergency button, to go back upstairs, to make any other choice. Her feet kept moving. A black car sat at the curb, running quietly. The suited man opened the rear door, and Imani saw him for the first time. Shin Woo-jin was not what she had assembled in her imagination. He was younger than the weight of his name suggested, somewhere in his mid-30s, with sharp, precise features and the kind of stillness that is not stillness at all, but very controlled movement. His hair was a striking silver, not the gray of age, but the deliberate silver of someone who had simply stopped trying to be something other than what he was. He wore a charcoal suit that had been made for him specifically, and he watched her get into the car with an expression of calm and measured interest. "Miss Carter." His voice was smooth and unhurried, carrying the faintest shape of an accent beneath the clean English. "I apologize for the unconventional introduction. You did not leave me many options when you blocked my number." Imani settled into the seat and reminded herself to breathe. "I do not generally send satin dress photos to strangers," she said, and her voice came out considerably more composed than she felt. "So I think we are both outside our usual behavior tonight." His mouth moved in something that was not quite a smile, but was in the neighborhood. "Get comfortable. We'll call it even." It was not quite a request and not quite a command. It sat somewhere between an invitation and an inevitability. Imani stayed in the car. The door closed behind her with the soft finality of something decided. The back seat felt considerably smaller with Shin Woo-jin 2 feet away from her. He smelled like cedarwood, and something underneath that she did not have a word for, but that her nervous system had already catalogued as significant. "So," she said, because silence felt more dangerous than conversation, "you are not actually with property management." "No." "And you found my apartment." "I own the building, among several others." He glanced at her, and there was that almost expression again. "Would you have preferred I let you block the number and spend the rest of the year wondering who had seen that photograph?" "Yes," she said immediately. "That sounds vastly preferable to whatever this is." He turned to face her more fully, and the quality of his attention was something she had not experienced before. It was total. He was not thinking about anything other than her. Most people she knew were always slightly elsewhere, but this man was entirely here. You are frightened. You sent a man in a suit to collect me, so yes, mildly. If you want to go back, he said, and his voice was completely level, say the word and we go back right now. No consequences, no contact. It is over. He meant it. She could tell he meant it, and that somehow made her more curious rather than less. Why is it not over already then? What do you actually want? He was quiet for a moment. To understand what kind of woman takes a photograph like that for herself and then blocks the man who received it without waiting to find out who he is. Imani looked at him steadily. That is either the most interesting thing anyone has said to me in months or a very polished manipulation. Both things can be true simultaneously. She looked out at the Chicago night moving past the windows. She thought about Brandon's Instagram post. She thought about 2 years of making herself smaller. Where are we going? Somewhere private. I prefer to have important conversations without an audience. That is genuinely something a concerning person would say. His lips moved again, slightly more than before. You are funny when you are nervous. You are very calm for someone in an unusual situation. I created the situation. It would be strange to be alarmed by it. The car stopped outside a building in the West Loop that Imani had walked past 100 times without registering. All clean lines and dark glass. The suited driver, who she gathered was called Daeho, opened her door. Shin Woo-jin stepped out and extended a hand. She ignored it and got out on her own. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, she thought, or something adjacent to it. The elevator required a keycard. They rode up without speaking, Imani counting floors, Shin Woo-jin watching her count without comment. When the doors opened, they stepped directly into a penthouse that looked like someone had taken a design magazine and made it breathable. Floor-to-ceiling glass revealed Chicago spread below them in all directions. Lights scattered like someone had dropped a jar of stars. "This is yours," she said, before she could stop herself. "One of them." Of course it was. "What exactly do you do, Mr. Shin?" He moved to a bar cart with the ease of someone moving through a space that was entirely his. He poured 2 glasses of something she did not recognize and brought one to her without asking. "Logistics," he said. "Property. Import and export. Investment." "You are being deliberately vague." "I am being polite." He handed her the glass, and their fingers did not quite touch, and Imani felt the near miss like a sound. "The full truth tends to leave people before dinner, and I would like you to stay for dinner." "Try honesty," she said. "I might surprise you." He looked at her for a long moment with those precise dark eyes. Then he set his glass down. "I run organizations that operate outside the boundaries of what is legally sanctioned. I also operate legitimate businesses that are clean and documented and profitable. I control significant territory in this city and several others. I have rivals who would use anyone connected to me as a means of communication. And I have resources that make me difficult to prosecute." He paused. "Does that frighten you?" It should. Imani's heart was moving fast, but not entirely from fear. "You are telling me you are a criminal. I am telling you I am powerful. How you interpret that is yours to decide. And you invited me here because of a misdirected photograph? I invited you here because you are the first person in a long time who genuinely surprised me. The photograph was the introduction." He stepped closer, and Imani's back met the window behind her. Not trapped. She could move. She chose not to. "Most people in my life are entirely predictable. You blocked me. No one blocks me." Maybe more people should. Probably. His silver hair caught the low light, and his eyes were doing something she did not have a category for. "Are you going to run?" She thought about Brandon and about small and safe and all the ways she had arranged herself around other people's comfort. "Not yet," she said quietly. Shin Woo-jin's expression shifted into something slow and deliberate. "Good." Dinner was delivered by someone who set the table and vanished like a thought. The food was extraordinary, some conversation between Korean and West African flavors that she could not name but finished completely. Shin Woo-jin asked her real questions about her work in graphic design, about what she actually wanted her life to look like rather than what seemed reasonable to want, about the photographs she took for herself when no one was watching. He listened with his whole attention, and Imani realized she could not remember the last time someone had done that. "Your turn," she said, after her third glass of something warm and amber. "Why are you single? Men who look like you and own half of Chicago do not stay unattached by accident." "Who says I am single?" Her stomach dropped. He looked almost apologetic. "I am not married, but your expression just now was genuinely illuminating." "You are terrible." "Frequently." He refilled her glass. "I am not unmarried because the people I encounter want proximity to power or proximity to money. No one has ever blocked my number before. No one has called me terrible to my face over dinner. You clearly need to spend more time with honest people." He laughed, a real one, low and brief, and Imani felt it somewhere in her chest. "I am beginning to think you might be right." "Tell me about your ex," he said a while later.
"Absolutely not. He hurt you. He made me smaller," she said before the wine could ask permission. "I spent 2 years trying to be easier to love, and it was never enough. He left me for someone he found more convenient, and I have spent 6 months wondering what I did wrong." Shin Woo-jin's eyes went very still. "What is his name?" "Why?" "Curiosity. You are not having a conversation with my ex about my feelings." "I was not planning a conversation." His voice was mild, his eyes were not. "That is not reassuring. It is protective. It is excessive and slightly alarming." Imani held his gaze. "He made me feel invisible. That is done. I do not need anyone to address it on my behalf." Shin Woo-jin was quiet for a moment. Then, "You deserve someone who does not require you to be less. The bold parts, the parts that block strange men and get in the car anyway. All of it." Imani's breath caught. "You do not know me. Then let me." He leaned forward slightly. "Stay. Not just tonight. Stay and let me show you what it looks like to be with someone who is paying attention. This is not rational. No. You are dangerous. Very. I should absolutely leave right now. Probably." He extended his hand across the table. "But you will not." Imani looked at his hand, at his face, at the city laid out behind him like something offered. She thought about Devon. She thought about safe and small and invisible. She took his hand. Shin Woo-jin stood, and when he looked at her, his silver hair and dark eyes together made something in her chest do something she had not planned for. "Tell me to stop," he said. "No." He kissed her then, careful and precise, the way he did everything. When she kissed back, it became something else entirely. When they finally separated, both breathing differently, he pressed his forehead to hers. "This changes things," he said quietly. "I need you to know you can still leave." Imani considered it, actually considered it. Then she said, "Not yet." 3 weeks later, Imani's life had become something she would not have recognized from the outside. Shin Woo-jin was constant without being suffocating, present without performing it.
He texted her good morning in Korean and waited patiently while she learned to text back. He sent cars for her after late studio sessions. He took her to a private gallery showing after hours and stood beside her while she walked slowly through each piece, like each one was a conversation worth having. He watched her the way people watch things they had decided matter. And he had layers she had not anticipated. In the glimpses she caught of his working life, the legitimate ones, he was cold and economical. With his staff, he was respected and obeyed. But alone with her, in his kitchen at midnight or walking along the lakefront, he became something less armored, something that surprised her with its quietness. "You are staring," he said one evening without looking up at the documents spread across his desk. Imani was editing on the couch with her legs tucked under her. "You have a tell," she said. "When something is not going the way you planned, you go very still. Stillness that is different from your regular stillness." He glanced at her. "I do not have tells." "You absolutely have tells. What is wrong?" He closed the folder. "Someone is testing the edges of what is mine. It is being handled, but it requires attention." "Meaning the illegal kind of what is yours?" "Meaning mine." He stood and crossed to the couch, pulling her into his lap with the easy certainty of someone who had stopped asking and started assuming, and she had at some point stopped minding. "I told you what my life is. If it becomes too much—" "It is not too much," she said, and kissed him before he could finish the sentence. He was right about her being different. She felt it. She stood straighter. She stopped editing herself mid-sentence. She spoke up in rooms that would have made her quiet 6 months ago. Shin Woo-jin remembered everything, that she could not stand food that was too sweet, that she needed to be left alone for the first hour after she woke up, that she photographed things that were in the process of becoming rather than things that had already arrived. He made her feel like all of her was the point. "Why me?" she asked one night, in the particular darkness that is not quite sleep and not quite awake. Really, you could have anyone. He was quiet long enough that she thought he might not answer. "Because you are the only person in recent memory who made me feel inconvenienced," he said finally. "Everyone else arranges themselves around me. You blocked my number." He paused. "It was extraordinary. So this is novelty?" "No." His voice shifted into something that did not have any performance in it. "This is a you make me feel like a person rather than a position thing. This is a I think about you when there is nothing to gain from thinking about you thing. This is a you have become dangerous to me thing." Dangerous how? Dangerous because people I care about become accessible to my enemies. His arm tightened slightly. Dangerous because I am making decisions based on what keeps you safe, and that was never a variable in my calculations before. She kissed him before he could say the rest. When they broke apart, she whispered, "I am not leaving. You should." Too late. He pulled her close and she could feel the controlled exhale move through him. "You are going to ruin me completely." "Good. You probably deserve it." He laughed against her hair, and Imani felt the sound settle somewhere permanent inside her. That night was the first time. Shin Woo-jin was precise and attentive, watching her face with the same focused quality he brought to everything. When he told her she was extraordinary, he believed him because he said nothing he did not mean. When he said, "You are perfect exactly like this," something inside her that Brandon had quietly fractured repaired itself without drama. Afterward, she lay in his silver-gray sheets, and he traced slow patterns on her shoulder. "Tell me something true," he said, "something you have not told anyone." Imani thought about it. I used to believe that being loved was something you had to earn by being useful, that if I was helpful enough and accommodating enough and easy enough, someone would eventually decide I was worth staying for. He went still, then pulled her closer. And now? Now I am starting to believe I might just be worth staying for on my own. Sarang, he murmured into her hair. What does that mean? It means you are mine and I intend to keep you. That is not what it means. It is close enough. But the quiet did not hold. 2 days later, the first message arrived from a number she did not recognize. You looked beautiful in the green coat yesterday. Riverwalk, 4:15. She had been at the Riverwalk in a green coat at 4:15. Someone had been watching her from close enough to see the color. She showed Shin Woo-jin immediately. His face went completely flat, not angry, emptied. Daeho, he said quietly, and his driver appeared in the doorway. Find out who, now. June, maybe it is not just anything. His voice was sharp for the first time since she had known him. Someone is watching you. Someone knows you are connected to me. This is what I was afraid of. More messages came across the following week. Photographs of her leaving his building, coming out of her design studio, meeting Kasia for brunch. Each one accompanied by something that started threatening and got worse. She's lovely when she laughs. Does she know what you have done? How long before she pays for your choices? Shin Woo-jin insisted she move to the penthouse. Daeho became her constant companion, and Imani began to understand what Shin Woo-jin's life actually meant. Not the silver hair and the clean lines of the space he occupied, but the specific weight of being someone who other people calculated. Then Brandon called. She stared at his name on her screen for 3 rings. They had not spoken since the breakup. She answered because some part of her that had spent 6 months replaying every conversation was still looking for the version of the ending that made sense. Imani, his voice was careful and familiar. I know this is unexpected. I've been doing some work on myself, and I realize I owe you an apology. A real one, not a text. Can I see you? Just for coffee. She should have said no. She should have ended the call. But the part of her that still wanted to understand what she had done wrong said yes before the rest of her could vote. Coffee, 1 hour, the place on Wabash. That's it. When she told Shin Woo-jin, his expression went carefully neutral in the way that meant he was managing something he did not trust himself to say. You're meeting your ex. For closure, that's all. I don't like it. You don't have to like it. I'm not asking permission. The words came out sharp, and she did not take them back. She was not going to be managed. Shin Woo-jin looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You are right. I am sorry. Take Daeho. Keep him close. That's a lot of surveillance for a coffee meeting. That's basic precaution. Please, Imani, for me. The genuine quality of his concern in his voice softened her. Fine. He stays outside. The coffee place was bright and public and full of people on laptops. Brandon was already there, and seeing him felt like nothing, which was its own kind of answer. He stood and hugged her, and she allowed it for a polite second. You look different, he said. Good different. What did you want to say, Devin? Brandon, he corrected, with a small laugh. I hurt you. I was selfish, and I made you feel like you were not enough, when the truth is, I was not equipped for someone like you. I've been working on that. I'm sorry. Old Imani would have held those words like water in her hands, afraid to spill a drop. New Imani just felt the completion of something. I appreciate that, she said, and I mean that, but I've moved on. I'm happy, really happy.
Something moved across his face. Is it serious? Very. He pulled out his phone. Hey, can I grab your phone for a second? I think I left some photos in your cloud from that trip we took. Old memories I wanted to keep. It was so casual, so reasonable.
Imani unlocked her phone and handed it over and watched him scroll and tap with the ease of someone who had done this before. Just airdropping a few things takes a second. He smiled at her and handed it back, and they talked for 20 more minutes about nothing in particular. And when she left, she felt genuinely finished with that chapter. Daeho was at the car. Everything fine? Yes, she said. Good. I actually have closure. What Imani did not know was that Brandon had installed professional-grade surveillance software on her phone in the 60 seconds he had held it. Every message, every location, every call now feeding to an external source. And across the city, federal investigators were already monitoring the output and building something carefully around it. For 2 weeks, everything felt like the life she had not known she was building toward. The messages stopped. Shin Woo-jin was easier in his body, less vigilant. They fell into rhythms that felt like permanence. Mornings where he taught her Korean vocabulary over espresso. Evenings where she worked while he worked beside her, in comfortable parallel silence. Nights where they chose each other with the specific ease of people who had stopped performing choosing. Say it again, he murmured against her hair one early morning. Saranghae, she said, her Korean improving in ways that made him look at her like she had done something remarkable. He pulled back to look at her, unguarded in the way she had learned to recognize as rare. I did not think I was capable of this anymore. Of what? Of wanting something I was not willing to lose. He traced the line of her jaw with one finger. You make me want to protect things instead of just controlling them. She kissed him slow. They got lost in each other again until Daeho's discreet knock pulled them back. Boss, we have a problem. Shin Woo-jin was on his feet and transformed before the sentence finished. He stepped into the hallway. Low, urgent voices. When he returned, his face was a closed room. What is it? Our secure communications have been accessed. We have a breach, and federal agents have made contact with one of my suppliers. They are building something. He looked at her. Imani's stomach moved. What does that mean for us? It means this life I told you would only touch you at the edges is moving inward. He sat on the bed, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked tired. You should leave while it is still clean. Stop trying to make leaving sound like concern. I am not going anywhere. He pulled her into his arms with a force that told her more than his words. You are too good for this world. Or maybe I am exactly what this world has been missing. 3 days later, Daeho found the spyware during a routine sweep. Every message between her and Shin Woo-jin, every location, every photograph flowing outward for 2 weeks. When was it installed? Shin Woo-jin's voice was entirely empty. Daeho checked the data trail. 2 weeks ago, a Tuesday, the day she had met Brandon for coffee. Imani felt the blood leave her face slowly and completely. No, he would not. Miss Carter, Daeho's voice was gentle. Her phone. She handed it over with fingers she could not feel. He worked in silence for several minutes, then looked at Shin Woo-jin. Surveillance-grade software, installed during a 60-second access window. When I gave him my phone, Imani said. Oh God, when I gave him my phone to get his photos back. Shin Woo-jin went very still, but it was a different stillness than the one she had learned to read. This one had something underneath it moving very fast. He used you. I did not know. I know. He crossed to her and held her face in both hands and looked at her directly. I know you did not, but he did. He played it perfectly. The apology, the closure, all of it was to get access to you, to get access to me. Imani felt sick with the specific nausea of having trusted the wrong thing. I am so sorry. You apologize for nothing. You trusted someone because you are a person who trusts. He turned to Daeho and his voice dropped into something she had only heard pieces of before. Find him. Shin Woo-jin, what are you going to do? What is necessary? No, she stepped in front of him. You promised me. You said you were changing. Killing him proves every single thing they think about you. His jaw worked. He put you in danger. He used your goodness to violate both of us. He will face consequences, the legal kind. I have lawyers who are very thorough in proper channels. Imani held his gaze. Be what you are telling me you are becoming, please. The rage in him was enormous and controlled, and she watched him choose. Fine. He turned back to Daeho. Legal channels. Make it comprehensive. That night, she lay in his arms, unable to sleep. Brandon had used her need for resolution to betray someone she loved. She had been so certain she was seeing clearly. Stop, Shin Woo-jin said into the dark. I can hear you thinking. I should have known. He was very well prepared. That is not your failure. You did not trust him. You trusted that people sometimes mean their apologies. He pulled her closer. That is not a flaw. I do not want you to become someone who does not believe apologies are possible. He was quiet. That would be a significant loss. 3 days later, 2 federal investigators approached her outside her design studio with badges and professionally sympathetic expressions. Miss Carter, we know about the spyware. We know you've been in a relationship with a person of significant interest to this investigation. We want to offer you a way forward. Immunity, relocation if necessary. You just have to cooperate. She kept her voice level. I don't have anything to tell you. You've been in his home for weeks. You've heard things. One of the agents stepped closer. Help us build our case and you're clear. If you refuse, you're complicit. When we bring this down, you go with it. Conspiracy, racketeering. You are an intelligent woman. Do not sacrifice your future for someone who sees you as temporary. Heat moved through her chest. You do not know anything about him. We know he is dangerous. We know people around him tend to end up as consequences. Am I under arrest? Not currently.
Then I am leaving, and anything further goes through my lawyer. She walked away with her spine straight and her legs not entirely steady. Behind her, she heard one of them say, "She will come around eventually. They always do." Shin Woo-jin was waiting when she returned and read her face before she said a word. "They approached you?" "Yes." "And?" "I refused. I walked away." He exhaled. "They will come back with more. What do we do?" He was pacing with the controlled energy of someone who normally did not need to pace. "I get out completely, not gradually, completely. Legitimize every remaining operation. Walk away from everything else. It is the only clean solution." "You would do that?" He stopped pacing. "I am already doing it. I have been doing it since about 2 weeks after you got in the car." He looked at her steadily. "It takes time, months, and while it is happening, you are in an elevated position of risk. They will keep pressuring you. My rivals will interpret my exits as instability. It gets harder before it resolves." Imani thought about the version of herself who would have said yes to the agents, who would have gone back to small and safe and invisible. She looked at Shin Woo-jin, silver-haired and serious, and choosing her in every calculation he made. "Then we handle harder," she said, "together." The kidnapping happened on a Thursday. She was leaving a photography collective where she had been showing her portfolio to people who wanted to publish it, something entirely hers, entirely clean. Daeho was 10 steps behind her, assessing the street. She did not see the vehicle until its doors were already open, a hand across her face, arms pulling her backward, Daeho calling out behind her, and then nothing. She woke in what her professional knowledge of crime films told her was a warehouse. Her wrists were secured behind her chair. 4 men with Eastern European accents and the specific patience of people who were waiting for something to happen stood nearby. The one who seemed to be in charge smiled when her eyes focused. "Miss Carter, welcome back. We were concerned you might sleep through the event." "What do you want?" Her voice came out steadier than she had any right to expect. "We want Shin Woo-jin to understand the consequences of trying to retire.
Men in our business do not get to simply decide they want something different. He looked amused. You are the message. They did not hurt her physically, but time passed in the specific torture of not knowing, of waiting, of hearing nothing but the buildings settling around her and her own breathing, and the low conversations of men who were not concerned about her being afraid. When the warehouse doors opened, she had never in her life felt relief and terror arrive simultaneously in equal measure. Shin Woo-jin walked in with Daeho and 4 others, and the expression on his face was something she would spend a long time filing carefully away. There was no anger in it. Anger is hot. This was cold, the way space is cold, entirely without warmth, entirely focused. Let her go. His voice was quiet in a way that was worse than shouting. Or what? You are going soft, Shin. Everyone can see it. A woman, and suddenly the most feared man in the city forgets who he is? His expression did not change. This is your final opportunity. Let her go, and you leave breathing. You are bluffing, the man said, and raised a weapon toward her. Shin Woo-jin moved in a way her eyes could not track. A blur and a sound, and the man was on the floor, gun gone, a silver-haired Korean man crouching over him with one knee on his chest. The other men raised weapons and froze when Daeho's team reflected them exactly. Release her. Someone cut the zip ties. She stumbled forward and Daeho caught her and moved her to the exit. She looked back once. Shin Woo-jin was still crouched over the man with the same cold, focused quiet. If you are in proximity to her again, he said, in a voice like winter, I will have considerably less patience. The man nodded rapidly. Shin Woo-jin stood, adjusted the front of his suit, and walked out. In the car, she could not stop shaking. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt the controlled tremor running through him, too. I should have been faster. You were there. Always. He held her at arm's length to check for injury with hands that were not entirely steady. Did they hurt you? Only scared me. That is sufficient. His jaw was tight. That is more than sufficient. Later, after she had showered and the adrenaline had finished its work on her, she found him on the balcony, looking at Chicago the way people look at things they are deciding about. I saw you in there, she said, standing beside him. I saw what you are capable of when it matters. And I am not afraid of you. I am afraid for you. That level of rage, Shin Woo-jin, it's going to hollow you out if you keep it inside. He was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to end it, he said. All of them. The only thing that stopped me was knowing what it would cost. What would it have cost? You. He looked at her. I could not carry the version of this where you look at me differently. That is not virtue. That is selfishness. That is love, she said. Those are sometimes the same thing. He almost smiled. 2 more weeks, 3 at most. My lawyers have structured the exit. The organizations have accepted the terms. We go to Portugal first, then wherever you want. Clean slate. Real life. You would actually leave it all? He tucked a piece of her hair back with one finger. I already told you, you are worth more than everything I built put together. I just finally found something that proved it. The federal agents came one final time with a warrant and removed equipment and files, and found documentation so thorough and so legitimately clean that they left with considerably less than they arrived hoping for. This is not finished, one of them said on his way out. What I was is finished, Shin Woo-jin replied calmly. You cannot prosecute someone for prior intentions. Daeho appeared at his shoulder afterwards with an update on Brandon. Devon has been charged. Wiretapping, illegal surveillance. The cooperation deal collapsed when our legal team proved the spyware was obtained through illegal access. Shin Woo-jin looked at Imani. Is that resolution enough? She thought about it. 6 months of wondering what she had done wrong. A year of being made small. A man who had turned her need for closure into a weapon and handed it to strangers.
Yes, she said, that is more than enough. I do not need to hear from him or about him again. He nodded. Then it is finished. They landed in Lisbon 3 weeks later. The apartment Shin Woo-jin had arranged was in the Alfama district, old stone and terracotta, and morning light coming through windows that had been there for centuries.
Imani stood on the small balcony looking at the city and felt for the first time in longer than she could track like she could take up exactly as much space as she actually occupied. Shin Woo-jin came up behind her with 2 cups of coffee and the ease of someone who had learned to be present without filling silence unnecessarily. "Regrets," he said, "about leaving Chicago." She shook her head. "About the photograph." She turned in his arms and smiled. "Best mistake I ever made. You changed my life." "You changed mine first," he said. "You showed me I was worth wanting to change." She had not known that was what she was doing. She had just been herself. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. 6 months later, her first photography show opened in Lisbon. Shin Woo-jin stood in the gallery for 3 hours and watched people respond to her work with the specific satisfaction of someone whose pride has nowhere to go but out. When he proposed, he did it at home with no production, just the 2 of them in the kitchen, him setting down his coffee cup and saying, "Marry me, Imani. Build the rest of this with me." She said yes before he finished the sentence because some things do not require deliberation. The wedding was small. Kazia came, Daeho came, a handful of people who actually knew them. They exchanged vows in the garden of an old quinta outside the city, with the sun doing something spectacular, and neither of them noticing because they were looking at each other. On their wedding night, Imani looked at Shin Woo-jin and remembered the first time she had seen him in the back of that car, silver-haired and entirely controlled and entirely unknown. Now he was hers. Soft only in the specific way he was soft with her, human in the way he had apparently forgotten he could be. "What are you thinking?" he asked, pulling her close. "That I sent a photograph to the wrong number and ended up with exactly the right person." He laughed, and she knew she would spend her life collecting that sound. "I received a photograph from a stranger and found the only person who made me want something more than control." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Was it worth it?" Shin Woo-jin. She pulled back to look at his silver hair and his dark eyes and the specific warmth she had learned to read in his face. "You are everything I chose, every risk, every difficult day, every impossible conversation. You are worth all of it. 1,000 times you are worth all of it." He kissed her then, and they got lost in each other the way they always had, the way she understood now they always would. Years later, when people asked Imani how she met her husband, she smiled in a way that suggested the story was better than anything she could summarize. "Wrong number," she said. "Right person. Sometimes the thing you send by mistake is exactly what needed to be sent." And Shin Woo-jin, standing beside her, silver-haired and present and entirely hers, would add, "Sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that brings you home." They had built something real from something accidental, found each other in the least likely place, proved that people from entirely different worlds could decide to create a world entirely their own. Imani never regretted the photograph, never regretted blocking the number or getting in the car or choosing to stay every single time it would have been easier to leave. Because sometimes the thing that frightens you most is the thing that was always meant for you. And sometimes the wrong number changes absolutely everything. So here is my question for you, and I genuinely want to know. If you accidentally sent a bold photo to a dangerous stranger with silver hair who insisted on meeting you, would you get in the car or would you block the number and never look back? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one and I love hearing what you think.
If you loved Imani and Woo-jin's story, hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps more people find these stories, and it means the world. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next unexpected love story that finds its way to this channel. Share this with someone who believes in taking the risk for the right person, or anyone who has ever made a mistake that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to them. Drop a comment telling me your best wrong number or accidental moment that changed the direction of everything. I read every single one, and your stories might inspire what comes next. Until next time, remember that sometimes everything you were looking for was waiting on the other side of the thing you almost did not do.